The Miller family reunion unfolded exactly as it always had, at the same lakeside park, under the same sprawling trees, with the same familiar routines. Long picnic tables were draped in red and white checkered cloths. A buffet line snaked across the grass. Kids shrieked as water balloons burst midair. Adults clustered in small groups, exchanging updates they'd saved up all year. 75 relatives had gathered. 3 generations, all in one place. My younger brother Tyler made a grand entrance, as usual. The moment he arrived, he became the unofficial centerpiece of the afternoon, proudly displaying his brand-new BMW. He'd parked it near the entrance on purpose, the metallic blue paint catching the sunlight like it was part of the show. "It's the 5 Series," he told a group of impressed uncles. "Fully loaded. $850 a month on the lease, but with my new sales director role, it's manageable. You've got to project success if you want it, right?" Mom watched from the dessert table, glowing. Tyler's thriving at the pharmaceutical company. His territory spans 3 states now. Sales director before 30, Dad chimed in. That's how real careers are built. I stood quietly in the buffet line, spooning potato salad onto my plate, only half paying attention. This was familiar territory, Tyler performing, my parents basking in reflected pride, and me existing comfortably offstage as the daughter who'd chosen a less traditional path. Aunt Carol stepped up beside me, reaching for the coleslaw. She was Dad's younger sister and a seasoned management consultant who lived out of hotels and airports. We'd stayed close over the years, bonded by similar work and mutual respect. "Victoria," she said warmly, "I haven't seen you in ages. How's that $890,000 consulting contract going? You must be nearing the finish line." The noise around us vanished. Tyler stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze in midair. My parents turned in unison, their expressions blank with confusion. Uncle Mike nearly dropped his plate. "What contract?" Dad called out. I placed my plate down slowly. "It's progressing well. We're about 3 months from wrapping up, and the client's pleased with the results so far." Aunt Carol kept going, unaware she'd set off a bomb. "And they're still considering a 1-year extension, right? That would put the total around $1.2 million, maybe $1.30 if they exercise all the options." "Yes." Mom approached us, her hands shaking slightly. "Victoria, what is she talking about?" Aunt Carol finally noticed the stunned faces. Her eyes widened. "Oh, you didn't tell them about Meridian?" "We didn't go into specifics," I said calmly. Dad's voice tightened. "What Meridian contract?" "I have a 2-year consulting engagement with Meridian Technologies," I explained. "Total value is $890,000 plus expenses." The reunion went silent. Even the kids stopped running. Tyler was the first to react. "That can't be right. You work from home. You make slides." "I'm an independent strategy consultant focused on digital transformation for Fortune 500 companies," I said evenly. "My usual rate is $350 an hour, but Meridian is a fixed-fee engagement tied to deliverables." Mom clutched her chest. "That's over $400,000 a year. Before expenses and taxes, yes." Aunt Carol shook her head in disbelief. "Landing Meridian was huge. I assumed you'd told them. You were so proud." "When did she tell you?" Dad asked. 18 months ago, when she signed. We met in Chicago. She walked me through the entire scope, timeline, and compensation." I nodded. "I told you I'd landed a major client. You asked if I was still doing consulting from home." Tyler stared at me. "You're really making that much?" "This year, yes. Last year was lower. It fluctuates." Dad sank onto a bench. "You work in yoga pants." "Sometimes," I said. "That doesn't change the value of the work." Uncle Mike leaned forward. "How many clients do you have?"
3.
"Meridian is the largest. I also have an annual contract worth $120,000 and a project-based client bringing in about $80,000. So, around $645,000 in revenue," Aunt Carol calculated. "Yes." Mom looked faint. "That's more than your father makes." "Different risk, different structure," I replied. I have no benefits and no guarantees. Tyler glanced back toward his BMW. I've been bragging about my salary all afternoon. Revenue isn't profit, I said gently. After expenses and taxes, my take-home is closer to $310,000. The lake rippled quietly behind us as the family absorbed the truth, one they'd never thought to ask about. Dad slowly shook his head, disbelief written across his face. Even after all those expenses and taxes, you're still bringing home more than I do. This year, yes, I replied. But your compensation includes pension accruals, employer-matched retirement funds, and malpractice coverage. Your income is steady and protected. Mine isn't. Aunt Carol shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting her role in this reveal. I'm really sorry, Victoria. I honestly thought your parents were aware. You've spent 5 years building this practice. I assumed they'd been keeping up. They knew I was consulting, I said softly. They just never asked what that actually looked like. Mom's voice barely carried. You told us you were working from home.
I did.
And whenever I tried to explain the scope, the clients, the projects, the money, it was brushed off or redirected. Eventually, I stopped offering details. By now, the reunion had ground to a halt. Every nearby table had gone quiet. Some relatives pretended to focus on their food, but no one was fooled. Others stared openly, rapt. Cousin Jennifer leaned forward. I see your LinkedIn posts all the time. Strategy consulting, digital transformation. I thought it was just motivational content. I didn't realize those were real projects. They're very real, I said. And they're for Fortune 500 companies. Uncle Mike frowned thoughtfully. I've always wondered, what does a strategy consultant actually do? The question caught me off guard. It was sincere. For once, no one was minimizing or joking. I help companies manage high-stakes change, I explained. For Meridian, I'm leading a digital overhaul, modernizing their systems, restructuring their data, training leadership teams. For Patterson, I'm redesigning their supply chain strategy. For Vertex, I'm helping them launch into new markets. Aunt Michelle blinked. That sounds intense. It is, I said. That's why they hire specialists. It's cheaper to bring in targeted expertise for a defined period than to hire a permanent executive with long-term benefits. Tyler stared past me, his earlier swagger gone. So when you said you couldn't go to Vegas for my bachelor party last year, I could afford it, I clarified. I chose not to spend $2,000 on a weekend trip while I was managing a critical phase of a major client engagement. It was about priorities, not money. But we thought you were barely getting by. You assumed that, I said evenly, because I live simply and work from home. I never said I was struggling. No one asked. Dad cleared his throat. So, what is your financial situation? Mom gasped. Don't ask her that. It's okay, I said. It's a fair question. I took a breath. I have about $1.1 million in retirement accounts, $340,000 in taxable investments, and roughly $180,000 in cash reserves. My condo is fully paid off. I bought it 6 years ago for $285,000. It's now worth around $420,000. My total net worth is just over $2 million. The silence was complete. Even the kids had gone still. Tyler slowly sat down beside Dad. You're a millionaire. Technically more than one, I said. And I drive a 2019 Honda Civic. I bought it used, paid cash. It's dependable, efficient, and does exactly what I need. A luxury car would just drain $800 to $1,200 a month on depreciation, insurance, and upkeep. Aunt Carol nodded knowingly. Victoria's always been disciplined with money. When she launched her practice, she lived on $40,000 a year and invested the rest. Built an emergency fund, maxed retirement accounts, laid a solid foundation before scaling. Mom looked at her wounded. You knew all this? Of course, Aunt Carol said gently. We talk whenever I'm in town. She updates me on her business, asks for input on contracts, client strategy. We talk because I ask and listen. The implication hung heavily in the air. Dad stared at the table for a long moment. Then he asked quietly, "Why didn't you tell us about Meridian?" "I did," I said. 18 months ago. I called and said I'd signed a 2-year contract with a Fortune 500 company. You said, 'That's nice, honey,' and went back to the game. I didn't bring it up again." Mom's eyes filled. "We should have paid attention." "Yes," I said simply. Tyler swallowed. "I've been awful about your work. I called it a little side hustle." "I'm sorry." "I remember," I said. "Thank you for apologizing." Uncle Mike perked up. "Are you taking on new clients? My company might need someone like you." I smiled faintly. "I'm fully booked right now. I keep my client list small so I can do exceptional work." "Exactly," Aunt Carol said. "That's why she commands premium rates. Her clients get her full expertise, not a diluted version." Mom dabbed her eyes. "Can you tell me what your week actually looks like? Not the jargon, just your days." It was the first genuine question she'd asked about my job in years. Monday through Wednesday are usually client-facing, on-site visits or video calls. Meetings with executives, progress reviews, workshops. Thursdays and Fridays I work from home, writing strategy documents, roadmaps, training materials. About 50 hours a week on client work, plus another 10 on running the business and continuing education. "That's 60 hours, Dad said quietly. "Yes. Consulting isn't easy, but it's flexible. I choose my clients, set my terms, control my time. I don't answer to a boss, only to the clients I deliberately take on." Tyler looked at me, genuinely curious now. "How did you even learn all this?" And for the first time, the question didn't feel like a challenge. It felt like respect. 5 years of intentional growth. I didn't start at the top. I started small, working with local businesses for $75 an hour, handling basic strategy problems. I poured money into certifications, enrolled in courses, read constantly, and treated every engagement as a learning opportunity. Over time, I moved upmarket. Bigger companies, harder challenges, higher fees. Landing Meridian wasn't luck. It was the culmination of 5 years spent building skills, credibility, and trust. Aunt Carol nodded. "And relationships matter just as much. Victoria is exceptional at staying connected. She checks in with former clients, offers insight without expecting payment, and asks for referrals naturally. That's how you build a consulting practice that generates over $600,000 a year." Dad stared down at his folded hands. "I told you to find a real job when you started. I said consulting on your own was too risky." "You did." He swallowed. "I was wrong. You were worried," I said evenly. "I took a gamble. It worked. If it hadn't, your concern would have been justified." Mom reached for my hand. "I'm sorry we didn't support you. I'm sorry we judged instead of asking." "I forgive you," I said. "But understand this. I didn't keep quiet to prove anything. I stopped explaining because I was exhausted from defending choices you'd already decided were mistakes." Tyler rolled his BMW keys between his fingers. "I spend $850 a month on a car, so I look successful. You actually are successful, and you drive a U Civic." "Different values," I said. "You prioritize appearances. I prioritize freedom. Neither is inherently wrong, they're just different paths." "But your path led to $2 million in net worth." "Yes," I said. "But it meant years of restraint while others upgraded their lifestyles. I said no to luxury trips, new cars, and impulse spending. Most people don't want to make those sacrifices." Aunt Michelle hesitated. "When you said you couldn't be in my daughter's wedding party because of work." "I was scheduled to present to Meridian's board that same week," I said. "I couldn't move a Fortune 500 board presentation for a dress fitting. It wasn't avoidance, it was professional responsibility. We thought you were being difficult. I was being paid $37,000 that month. I couldn't afford to damage that relationship." Gradually, the reunion resumed. Kids went back to playing. Conversations restarted. But something fundamental had shifted. People looked at me differently now. As the afternoon faded, relatives approached with questions. Uncle Mike asked about negotiating contracts. Jennifer wanted advice on breaking into consulting. Aunt Michelle apologized for years of offhand comments. As the event wound down, Tyler found me near the dessert table. Can we talk? Just us. We walked toward the lake. I've treated you terribly, he said quietly. For a long time. Yes. I mocked your work, called it a hobby, acted like it wasn't real. I remember. He stared at the water. I earn $95,000 and lease a car I can barely afford, so people think I've made it. You earn 600 plus and don't care what anyone thinks. I care what I think, I said. That's enough. Can you help me? He asked. Not consulting, but building actual wealth. I studied him. Are you asking because you're embarrassed, or because you're ready to change? Both, he admitted, but mostly the second. It starts with spending less than you earn, I said. Driving something practical. Saying no when others say yes. It's uncomfortable, and it requires consistency most people avoid. I want to learn. Come by next week. We'll go through your numbers and make a plan. Driving home in my dependable Civic, I replayed the day. The shock, the silence, the realization that my family had misunderstood my life for years. But here's the truth. Their awareness changed nothing. The Meridian contract was still active. The work was still being delivered. The payments would still arrive. My success existed whether they acknowledged it or not. Their pride felt good. Their apologies mattered. Their interest was validating. But I'd validated myself for 5 years. Every renewed contract, every referral, every invoice paid without hesitation. I'd won long before this reunion. The first time a Fortune 500 company trusted me with 6 figures. The first time I calculated my real earning power. The first time my net worth crossed 7 figures. Their recognition was simply the closing chapter. I pulled into the condo I'd bought years ago and fully paid off. Tomorrow I'd meet with Meridian CTO. Next week, I'd finalize Patterson's proposal. Next month, I'd evaluate a new opportunity. My life would continue exactly as it had, focused, intentional, and built on delivering real value. The only thing that changed was that my family finally understood what Aunt Carol had always known. I was already successful. I had been for a long time.